I'm Jillian.
Ashley, and we're actually going to talk to you guys about fairness of accommodations tonight.
So when we think of special education, something that pops into our minds are accommodations, and throughout the courses that we've taken here, we have learned about accommodations and what they look like in the classroom.
So if you guys could just quickly turn to your partner and talk about what are accommodations and what are some ways that we see them used in the classroom.
Everyone else?
Just a few to give it a start.
Alright, so who can give us a definition or kind of explain what accommodations are? Alden?
So, it's like helpers and supporters for students to, I guess for all students to be on the same playing field. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Okay.
makes sense.
Anyone else? And I just want to bring up that Jenna and Meredith were talking about accommodations versus modifications, so just to remember that those are two very different types of supports for kids, and we're talking about accommodations. So basically, we said that our Alden, you got it, it's just to give kids a support system so that they can learn, so that can demonstrate the knowledge that they have on the same level as everyone else. So there are 4 different types of accommodations, just to bring it back. There's presentation, so how you present the information to the student. The response, the way the child responds to the assignment or the test or the question. The setting, the environment in which the child actually works, and then the timing and scheduling. So if you're talking about in test terms, do they have a specific amount of time? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Do they have to take it in a separate room? Well, that would be the setting, but do they have breaks? Do they have to do it all at once? Can they do it in a few days? So stuff like that.
And what we want you guys to think about in particular, especially the guys in the Ed Psych program, we are going to be special education teachers. Do you think that these type of accommodations are fair? Do you think they create a level playing field, or do you think they give those students more of a benefit? We just want you guys to think about that.
So again, we're just saying, is it fair for people who are so we're thinking about it more on a college level, so is it fair for people who are in special services to receive these accommodations that they get?
And then also what we talked about was everyone has received the email saying, oh, you're in this class, we really need a note taker to provide notes for one of the students who needs special services. Would you be willing to donate your notes? We'll take pictures and give them to the student. Once again, do you think that's fair that they're receiving the same degree that we are when we're the ones that are taking the notes for them?
So we're going to show you guys a clip from The Blind Side just to give a little bit of perspective. It's not the best quality, so please bear with.
We do that stinks.
I'd like to know this little water passes through a barrier.
That's basically right, Michael. Very good. Name the combatants in the Battle of Waterloo.
I know that. The little guy, Napoleon, he was on one side and a Duke was on the other.
Duke of Wellington.
Yeah, and the Duke of Wellington, yeah, Russian talking.
Prussians. I always think this.
Okay, so obviously from this example, we can see that he receives accommodations. He's verbally taking the test with his teachers, and in a previous scene before that, the blonde teacher that you saw at first, she walked into all the other teachers and she was like, he knows the material, he knows it, he just can't read it, he can't write it, but he understands the ideas. But in this specific way, okay, the reason he needed to do so well was so he could stay on the football team. Okay, but let's think of an idea beyond that. If you're not just doing it to be on the football team and then pursue a career in professional football, but think about it from a person who may not have these accommodations because they don't have a labeled disability and they don't necessarily get these. What if you're someone, and I know I am, the SAT, the ACT, all that stuff, you guys are probably very familiar with it, you sit down, you have that test anxiety, And sometimes you're confused by what a question says, or you know the idea, but you don't necessarily know how to write it, but if someone asked you, you could 100% explain it to them verbally. So how are we supposed to say, you know what, because you're not labeled or you're not receiving these, I know you can do it, it's still okay, you can do it, we know you can, but at the same time, you're sitting there like, okay, I know that you're telling me I can do that, but I don't think that I can do it without some sort of support. So how are we supposed to say, for typical students, you've got this, and then let me focus all my attention over here?
But if you guys consider the other side of the argument, he was not able to write his ideas out, but he was able to verbally express them. So as special education teachers, that's the accommodation that we provide for him. And if you think about it, he got C's on his test, so he passed. He wasn't excelling up above the other students that didn't need the support. He was doing just enough to show that he did know the ideas, he could communicate them, even though it wasn't the way that all the other students were doing so. Alright, so we're actually going to split you guys up into two groups, and we're going to give one of you guys the pro accommodation side and one of you guys the con accommodation side. Although you're going to be given a specific side, we want you guys to consider the other side as well and see where the other groups are going to be coming from, and then we're just going to have a little debate, share our thoughts.
So you're just gonna have 10 minutes because of time, obviously. You're gonna have 5 minutes to prepare, and then we're gonna have 5 minutes for debate. So these are your groups, it kind of just works right down the middle. So if you guys on the end just want to come on the side, and we'll pass out an article for the unfair side, an article for the fair side. And then there's only 6 articles between the two parties, so it's kind
Skim it. If it helps you guys, you guys are like,
you guys are
so we want you guys to consider the other side, also realize where the other side is coming from, and kind of just.
look at the articles, there's some data and everything.
And I also want you guys to decide what
Take a few minutes.
side you are on. Not like it doesn't matter if you're on the side. If you could choose, which would be the most side?
Like one point that I know a lot of people make that does make a lot of sense.
With regard to like environment necessarily supporting accommodations, like
What about afterwards, are we actually doing the people at this long if they go through college getting accommodations and then they go into the real world and try they aren't getting those accommodations and all of that, it's like there's one situation there.
but you
You
could
know,
literally
so
go,
now something.
yeah, anyone could go all day. So
I don't know,
when
like-
she went the afternoon, you
It
did
feels
just like
like
kept
that.
going. Yeah, and some people super take advantage of it because they're like, well, I'm gonna just keep going and take my exercise 5 times and like,
Throughout your entire life,
there's a
we'll
waste
give
of
you
those kids.
another week. That's not how the real world works, you
I
know?
think so.
You end up like psyching yourself out of your original
Yeah,
answer.
that's the thing. I know you're doing it.
Now it's like further down, not even look over here. And then just take it away.
I think that initial moment was like, oh, now you no longer have,
But like, I'm
no
no,
longer
I
use
also
a calculator in one of my I forget what it was, but like the extra time I would have to wait, I used to like take notes on, and then we couldn't have that anymore.
Some people
I
can't go to
couldn't, like, I was
bring that up.
AP, like it was the worst experience of my life, and it was only because I had to.
I think it's good, like,
No longer.
is autism.
It's gone.
And I know how a lot of the regions in New York State, you have to like transfer your answers into that little blue box or like, that like where you go, it was stuff like blows your mind, like, no, I failed, no, I understand, like, why can't I just write it on my paper? But this is my test, that's not my test, this is my test, why can't I
So
write
then
it
I
on
think I
there?
had to just.
So they have to give them like special versions for it,
No,
because
like,
otherwise
this
you
is it,
can't
like,
do
this is
it.
your best.
Since there he breaks down, like he completely shuts
At the
down,
same
he's like,
time, when you say that,
can't, what do you mean, I can't write on my test, what is it?
the idea of, even with like a simple, without
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the idea comes from, and when we look at
She
the
got
other
extra time in high
students, we're
school,
like,
and project
Mhm.
because.
well, you're not telling those other students,
went
well,
big,
do what you're
test
telling them
that,
you can't do
like,
without these.
And are you sitting on that for failure?
And actually, I like to come back up that when you had these popular, even from autism all the way to, about, on the third page about Bobby, you guys should just read some Bobby.
My brother has a big college
That they
he
can
can't correlate his thoughts, so he would get extended time because it just takes him that much longer to get his thoughts on paper. He's a really smart kid, but he has such trouble just putting everything together and getting it down. So he had extended time, and if he didn't have that, he would 100% fail.
Well, what
like
I also want you to consider is if Corinne,
Okay.
so just if Corinne's in the same spot, but she didn't have that necessary accommodation, is it fair to her if she could, if with more time, if she could verbally express it, you know what I mean? Just think about that.
Like if somebody had to scratch and claw for their C minus.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the other side, I guess.
Yeah, because I didn't have like an identifier, like, oh, you have dyslexia, that takes me
Yeah.
away. Would it be, like, I struggle with reading just because I had bad teachers all my whole
Obviously,
life.
like you were saying in the beginning, you need to give me support.
And there were
Yeah.
a lot of kids that should be classified that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that the people who do get accommodations haven't admitted, no,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
things should be classified.
Yeah.
You know, it's not
Like,
that
there
they're
should be-
cheating or anything.
No, this is not a social constructivist environment.
A lot of times.
All right, you guys just wanna start wrapping up your ideas so we can have our debate?
I love that on my website.
No, but it should, I mean, which is like a calculator.
Robin and her doing
It's in my life. That really includes results.
No, it's technology.
It's like, why is that?
Why can't you?
So, get your.
Did you put DNA on your little competition?
I heard. I did that.
Yeah, that is easy.
Alright, so we can bring it together because we're actually gonna start our little debate. So who would like to be the brave side that makes the point first?
Who's gonna step up to the plate here and begin this nice debate that we're about to have? Anyone, any takers?
Rob had some good ideas. What were you guys talking about over here?
Oh, well, I actually was making a con point on the pro side.
Wait for that.
Alright, Jesse, you raised your hand.
So
What do
we
you want
talked
to say?
about that, one of the first things brought up is that, that students may not be able to succeed after the fact, and, if all, doesn't mind us.
No, yeah.
As an example, we talked about how, like, she got to receive some services for extra time, and then, she was, like, deemed that she, like, couldn't have them anymore, and then once that was taken away, she was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't do this, like, she, like, banked on it, but then, like, she kind of realized that, like, wait, like, this is my only option, so, like, yes, I can do it, and then she was able to succeed without the extra time, so it's like, is that extra time, like, you just think you need it then, and you're kind of banking on it, and it's like, oh, like, you need this support, and, like, then you kind of, like, think that you can't do it without those supports, so then it kind of is that, like, self-fulfilling prophecy of, like, not being able to, be successful without that accommodation, so, they're back at us.
Anyone wanna go back on what Justine said?
Just strictly speaking about the time, like, I'm from Massachusetts State testing, there's no time limits on any of the tests for any students. So, like, if you don't finish, you can continue into the afternoon, use up all day, go into the next morning, like, within reason. I feel like they'd be like, all right, if it's getting ridiculous, but, like, they'll give you as much time as you need. And we were kind of talking about, like, for some students, if it's completely equal like that, it might not help them because you may be rechecking your answers, second guessing yourself, or you may be like taking too much time away from other activities that you could be working in. So if it's just for the students who need them, then it may help the students who don't need it to be more successful in their tests in the long run.
So I just wanna add something that you said. You said that you got all day, like,
Yeah.
you could
Forever.
come back to it.
Yeah.
But what about if someone like you, I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah,
you're
that's
a
okay.
person, but what if that's a math test and you're like, oh, I can finish this later, and I go and look at my questions on my math notes because I already know what's on that test. So why don't I just skim through my notes again and maybe go back and fix something? That's just another thing to think about. Anyone want to counter?
Or bring up a new point, what else did you guys talk about? Did you guys consider the other side at all? Or?
Oh, maybe we should just leave it at that. But, I mean, oh, we have 5 minutes? Okay, anyone else want to say? Sorry.
Kind of extending on what Justine was saying earlier with the self-fulfilling prophecy, there's also the, like, taking that a step further is, again, providing those assistance and accommodations throughout education when afterward they might not receive that, like, in the real world. Like, you might be setting them up for failure by, you know, giving them those, you know, supports, and then all of a sudden it be like, okay, now you're on your own, good luck. You know, and like at their first job having to meet a deadline, being like, well, my IEP said I get, you know, extended time. Your boss is gonna be like, oh, that's cute. Like, that doesn't work here. Like, you know,
That's so true. Because we were saying it was like a business and you had to make a business plan and you had a specific deadline, and then it was like, oh, well, you don't have that accommodation anymore here.
But at the same time, like, what if you have the kids who can't pass high school without accommodations? Like, my little brother is autistic, and he doesn't understand the concept where you can't write on the test and you have to transfer your answer to other, like, papers, or, like, the little blue book that you would get sometimes. Like, that completely blows his mind, and he completely shuts down. And he cannot transfer his answers. Like, he will not write anything if he has to transfer his answers from one sheet to another. And I understand that he can't necessarily do that in a job, but how's he gonna get a job if he can't even graduate from high school because he doesn't have the accommodation in the first place?
Just going off of that, I think that what we're saying is that your brother should not, obviously, like, not get that accommodation, but, like, I am such a person where I like to highlight things, and teachers have told me, like, you can't write on this test because we're giving it to the same on the next period, and I'm literally like, I can't, like, circle the word explain, like, I'm gonna leave things out, and it said not, and then I've, like, gotten questions wrong on tests because I'm not allowed to write on them, so then why are we being the disservice because I'm not gonna do as well because I can't write on my test?
Just from the like pro accommodation side, like I think along with that, there's ways that like we help ourselves if we don't need accommodations, that other people need that help as well. Like I personally am a note taker for my capping class, and for me it really helps me to take notes actively during a lecture. Like even when Dr. Stivers gives us the slides, like I still write every word down in my own notebook because that action helps me, whereas someone in my class needs to listen and can't write at the same time. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm doing this to help me, and now I can do this to help them.
So I'm not gonna ask you guys which side you are, but I want you guys to raise your hands if you guys actually considered something that you never thought about accommodations.
And the only reason we broke you guys up into these groups is because, let's face it, we're special education teachers, or we want to be. And so how can we say, doing what we're gonna do, no accommodation. So we just we assume that everyone would lead towards one side, so we just need to divide it so it's not like we just couldn't give you that choice. But basically, so why did we choose this topic? Obviously it's very controversial, and we just wanted to bring awareness because look at how many of you raised your hand and said, I've never thought about something, and you guys brought it up. That's what we want to do. So basically what we're saying is, just the next time you plan a lesson, I know we're trying to move towards it and accommodating for all students, but actually think about that. Think about how many lesson plans you've made where it said you had a differentiation if lower students, if higher students. So we need to start moving away from that and being, okay, all students. And I know obviously that's very, very hard to do it in a classroom, but we need to consider both sides because when we turn to one child and say, you can do it, you can do it. And then you turn around and you say, okay, let me help you here. That hurts the typical student. That is putting them in a place where you're telling me I can do it, but you're not giving me anything that I can work with. And that's what we want you guys to just think about. So thinking about